You live in a home less efficient than a soldier's shack from 1944. Let that sink in for a moment. Right now, as you watch this, the walls around you, filled with their modern pink fiberglass or spray foam, are likely losing a silent war against the elements. A war that a hastily built temporary army barracks was winning 80 years ago. This isn't a story about nostalgia. It's a story about a forgotten standard of ingenuity born from crisis and scarcity that we somehow abandoned on the path to comfort. To understand what they did, you have to erase our modern idea of construction. This wasn't about luxury or resale value or even aesthetics. This was about one brutal, non-negotiable directive: keep men alive and functional in extremes with minimal fuel. The winter of 1944 in Europe was one of the coldest on record. The army couldn't gamble on shivering, frostbitten soldiers. They needed a building system that was fast, cheap, and incredibly effective. What they came up with was a masterclass in practical physics. The standard barracks wasn't fancy. Wood frame, wooden siding, but inside those walls was a 1-2 punch of insulation logic we've mostly forgotten. First, they used what was available: rock wool or mineral wool bats. This stuff is similar to what we use today, but here's the critical first difference. They installed it with a relentless focus on airtightness. Gaps were the enemy. A draft was a failure. Every seam was sealed, not with high-tech tapes, but with careful craftsmanship and the understanding that a leaky building was a deadly one. The second layer, however, is the real kicker. Outside that insulated wall, they didn't just slap on siding. They built a rain screen. They attached wooden battens, strips of wood, vertically over the sheathing. Then they attached the exterior siding to those battens. This created a continuous hidden air gap between the back of the siding and the wall itself. This wasn't for decoration. This was a breathing, drying, insulating machine. In winter, that stagnant air gap became a phenomenal insulator, a buffer zone that dramatically slowed heat loss. In summer, it acted as a chimney. As the sun heated the siding, the air in the gap would warm, rise, and vent out the top, pulling cooler air in from the bottom. This passive ventilation stopped heat from ever reaching the insulated wall, keeping the interior cool without a single watt of electricity. Modern homes, with their siding glued or nailed directly to foam or house wrap, trap that heat. They create an oven effect. The WWII engineers understood thermal mass and airflow in a way we've simplified out of existence. They were managing entire systems of energy, not just slapping in thicker bats. Here's the interesting part. It wasn't just about the R-value, a number we obsess over today. It was about radiant temperature. Those old barracks had extensive, simple radiant heat sources, massive cast-iron coal stoves often placed centrally. Radiant heat warms objects and people directly, not just the air. It feels profoundly different. You feel warm at a lower air temperature. Combine that with walls that were truly draft-free and buffered by that air gap, and you create a feeling of deep, stable comfort that our leaky, forced air furnace homes struggle to match. The soldier's comfort was a tactical calculation, and it was solved with beautiful, brutal efficiency. So, what happened? After the war, the building boom began. The goal shifted from, build it to survive and conserve, to build it fast and cheap for millions. The intricate details, the air gaps, the focus on craftsmanship for airtightness, they were time-consuming. New, cheaper materials promised easier installs. Central forced air heating and later cheap air conditioning created a brute force mentality. If the house is leaky, just pump in more warm air. If it's hot, just crank the AC. We traded sophisticated building science for mechanical overcompensation. We insulated, but honestly, we forgot to build a system. That rain screen principle? It's still used in high-performance homes today and in parts of Europe, but your average suburban home ignores it completely. We've sealed our houses tighter with modern wraps and tapes, which is good for air leaks, but without that ventilated cladding, we risk trapping moisture inside the walls, a different kind of problem. The old barracks, with its breathable vented design, managed moisture naturally. It was resilient. You're not going to rebuild your house. But, the lesson from those 1944 barracks is really a mindset we can all adopt: seal tight, ventilate right, and manage radiant heat. On a practical level, your mission is to hunt down drafts in your modern home with a religious fervour that would make a World War II sergeant proud. Caulk, weather strip, seal, seriously, that's your first biggest win. Second, think about radiant heat. Even a simple modern space heater that uses radiant principles can make a room feel cosier at a lower thermostat setting. And if you're ever building or renovating, advocate for a rain screen cladding system. It's honestly the single biggest architectural homage to that forgotten wisdom. Those barracks weren't just shelters, they were ecosystems of efficiency, designed by necessity. They remind us that true comfort isn't about overwhelming a problem with energy, but about designing with intelligence to avoid the problem in the first place. In our race for smart homes, we sort of overlooked the genius of a dumb, simple air gap. The soldiers of the greatest generation were kept alive by some of the most clever, pragmatic building science we've ever produced. And we left it behind, buried in a field manual, in our pursuit of something supposedly better. If you found this dive into forgotten ingenuity valuable, you're in the right place. Here, at Legacy of Survival, we resurrect the practical wisdom of the past. Hit that subscribe button, because we have more stories like this one, where history isn't just dates, it's a blueprint for smarter living. Drop a like if this changed how you see the walls around you, and share it with someone who needs to know that the best solutions are sometimes hiding in plain sight, in the pages of history. Thanks for watching.